I'll just have to cheer for Gary Roosevelt. Indeed, this is a great day for the steel industry. A steel house that was built back in the 50s in Chesterton, Indiana. And it, steel on the inside and steel furniture. As I learned about it after, so I say, let's get on with it. Let's start the process, building a lot of steel houses and making a lot of steel workers happy.
Harry works to this project. The satellite office will be provided after this facility for the all-state team. So this truly is public focused like a laser on changing American housing using alternate technologies, including
when we talk about the American dream, as I mentioned before, most people consider the single-family house as part of that American dream. But there are many lifestyles that, in fact, are different from the family. At the moment, we know that, for example, there are 50% of marriages end up in divorce, just for a start. There are many people that want to share habitation. They want to share living areas. The elderly want to share. There are many single parents that need to have accommodation and places for their children to be looked after so that they can go out to work. There are many places where people can have their enterprise at home. So in other words, what we're looking at is making affordable housing fit the actual lifestyle that people are preferring and people are looking for. So first of all, we're looking at different forms of housing. We want to show different possibilities and opportunities for house forms and configurations. And some of these are shown in some of the charrettes here, where you get assisted living housing and housing for the elderly and co-housing and even urban cooperatives and that type of thing. But we're not excluding, of course, the single-family house, which remains part of the American dream. As far as your question is concerned about the steel, we're not talking about building a Zeppelin or something that looks like it's made of steel. It is in fact what we're showing, and I think that this will in fact reveal that this house will look like the image of any house that is desired by the residents. We want to show possibilities of how that image can be improved. Certainly, for example, by having a steel frame, I think John mentioned that this house was built in 8 hours. We've got ideas of putting up a house in sections or in panels that can go up in a matter of hours, perhaps even less than 8 hours, so that you don't have the problems of the site. I was discussing with Dean Kelly, who mentioned this whole question that you don't have the problems of materials on the site. You don't have the site works that you normally have. And so we're looking at possibilities in steel that will still be the traditional appearance of home, but will be more efficient, that will be able to stand up to earthquakes as well, that will not be burnt down, etc., as easily as wood. And after all, when we're talking about wood, for example, we're talking about a technology that was used from the time of Abraham Lincoln, of the hammer and nail, and it's a wonderful material and it's very beautiful to use, etc. But surely we've advanced since then, and here is a wonderful opportunity for a new technology. I hope I've answered.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
The cost of construction compared to original now for finished unit. What is the...
Well, that's always it's a basic question of what is the cost of construction, the capital cost of construction. We know at this time that steel is on a par with lumber. Lumber prices are going up. It is true to say that steel is a little more expensive possibly than lumber, but it's not that's not where it ends. You see, the whole question of the cost of steel and the change to another technology is also in the training of operatives to use steel. And many builders have a mindset against change, unfortunately. They know how to do it with wood, etc. And that's something which we're trying to affect. We're trying to change methods. Now, if, for example, we get a large order of components, panels or sections or wet units or whatever, and say we say that, okay, the population of Gary, the attrition of the population is going to be reversed. We're going to have 200,000 people come and live in Gary, and we're going to start looking at big numbers of a community. Then obviously the number of components will reduce the actual price. You've got to have your order books filled properly in order to cut down the price. And so this question of bulk purchase is a very important factor. Another factor is this, that we do not take into consideration in the affordable equation the running costs of a house. And we're talking not about just about what I think the governor mentioned, the 2x4 steel 2x4s, which is the C-section, but we're also looking at different technologies using steel that John was referring to in the next century, that where we're looking at frames, we're looking at foam injection so that you can get energy efficient panels, and therefore we're looking at the running costs of a house. If, for example, we were to put up a house, and we've done other houses, other programs in our college have also done other houses, where, for example, we can save 68% in heating costs and 47% in cooling costs, then that gives more money to the person who lives in the house to spend the money, and also to put it on the mortgage, and also to qualify for mortgages. So this whole equation of how much does it cost a square foot, or what is the capital cost, is got to be looked at very carefully with all sorts of other figures, other parts of the equation, the indirect costs, for example. And our dean has suggested that what would happen if we started looking at the regulations and saying, the regulatory component in costing is enormous. It's causing a lot of extra costs. We want to actually look into that and see how we can actually reduce and make an economic picture that is comprehensive. There are many, many factors in the actual costing of a house. I hope I've answered that as clearly as...
Yes, ma'am.
My question concerns the employee aspect.
Hearing about the deficiencies of Gary and the problems of Gary, but there are many, many assets, and what we have actually is, in fact, one of the assets of Gary is the steelworks. It is the largest steelworks probably in the world. It's bigger than the Ruhr Valley in Germany. And that's a big asset, and that is an asset for job opportunities. I mean, obviously, and I don't want to go into the steel industry and start, jumping the gun on this, because you know more about it than I do, but it looks to me as though there are wonderful opportunities, or there could be wonderful opportunities for job opportunities, so that people would be able to put down their down payments on and become house owners. So that this obviously this question of job opportunities inevitably brings up the question of training to work on with the steel industry, and I presume that is something which would be brought in, although I don't want to jump.
In Gary, Indiana, what's the media through which we market? You got an idea? You got a product? Affordability on the long term? How do we market to the people, the 500 that want to buy a home in Gary?
We get together.
Okay.
Insurance companies and how they're responding to steel as opposed to wood. I mean, will it have effect on
Well,
the premium?
my knowledge is limited, but I understand that insurance companies are giving a break to those owners of steel-framed housing.
In addition to that,
Donating the steel for this, steel house for steel tight, for assembling it. And while Professor Mendelson and his team at U.S. Steelworks are looking into the future, students from the Gary Center will be helping to erect this daycare center for the children of Gary at Ivy Tech. So we just don't talk, we also walk the walk. And if I hope we've shown you a new face, another new face of Gary, Indiana. I would also like to thank our distinguished panel and to you, Lieutenant Governor O'Banion, for making this important and historic announcement, and let's do it. Thank you very much. I would like now, for those media who may have arrived late and would like to get a picture of the